Like we from Lagos, Mansa Musa reincarnated.
Tamara Padi was a businesswoman from South Africa who moved to the United Kingdom for a better life. She was a loving mother of 2 children and had worked hard to build a stable future for her family. After being married to her husband, Aubrey Padi, for 14 years, Tamara decided to separate from him because their marriage was troubled. This decision would lead to a tragic and violent end. In the early hours of July 7th, 2021, something terrible happened. Tamara was at her home in Staylebridge, Greater Manchester. Her estranged husband, Aubrey, who used to work in the South African Navy, entered her home without permission. He hid there, waiting for her to return. When Tamara arrived with a friend who was staying with her, Aubrey attacked her violently. He stabbed her multiple times while she was lying in bed. The friend was downstairs asleep and woke up to her screams. Aubrey fled the house but returned to continue the attack. Tamara died at the scene. This case shows a dark reality about domestic violence. It raises questions about how well we understand the warning signs of control and obsession in relationships. How could someone plan such a violent act against their own spouse? Could this tragedy have been prevented? What can families and communities do to protect victims of domestic abuse before it is too late? Tamara's life was filled with hope and ambition. She had dreams for her children and was building a business. Her story reminds us that domestic violence can happen to anyone, anywhere, even to strong and successful women like Tamara. It also forces us to ask, what's the cause of this? If you're captivated by real crime stories that peel back the layers of truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us as we uncover real cases, raise awareness, and give a voice to the voiceless. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now, let's dive in. Tamara Padi was born and raised in South Africa. She spent her early years in a country that has a diverse culture, but also faces many social and economic challenges. Growing up, Tamara experienced life in a community where opportunity for women to build independent careers were limited. Despite these challenges, she was determined to create a better future for herself and her family. As a young woman, Tamara worked hard to improve her life. She was focused on education and finding ways to support her family. Over time, she became involved in business, showing skill and ambition. However, like many others in South Africa, she faced challenges including safety concerns and limited career opportunities. These factors influenced her decision to look for a better environment to raise her children and pursue her career goals. Tamara's decision to move to the United Kingdom was motivated by several practical reasons. First, she wanted a safer environment for herself and her children. Safety concerns are common in many parts of South Africa, and Tamara hoped that living in the UK would reduce the risks for her family. Second, the UK presented better opportunities for her business career. The country's more stable economy and established markets offered a chance to grow her business and achieve financial independence. Third, Tamara sought a better quality of life, including better education options for her children, access to health care, and a community that would support her family's needs. Once in the UK, Tamara settled in Greater Manchester. She lived in a quiet neighborhood in Staylebridge, where she could focus on raising her children and building her business. Tamara was a mother to 2 children. While their ages and exact details are not widely publicized, it is known that she prioritized their well-being and education. She was actively involved in their lives, making sure they had stability despite the challenges she faced. Tamara's business career in the UK showed her dedication and hard work. She ran her own business, which provided income and independence. Her work required focus and time, but she balanced this with her responsibilities as a mother. Tamara's business activities contributed to her goal of building a stable future for her family. This goal was central to her life decisions. Tamara had personal goals related to creating a safe and supportive home environment. She sought to provide not only material stability, but also emotional support for her children. Tamara understood the importance of a strong family foundation and worked toward that even when facing difficulties in her marriage. Tamara Padi and Aubrey Padi were married for 14 years. Their marriage began in South Africa, where both lived before moving to the United Kingdom. During the early years, the couple appeared to have a stable relationship. They built a family together, having 2 children. Tamara focused on raising her children and developing her career as a businesswoman. Aubrey, meanwhile, worked in the South African Navy before relocating to UK. In the beginning, their marriage seemed typical, with shared responsibilities and mutual support. However, over time, the relationship changed. The couple began to experience difficulties that became more apparent as the years passed. Friends and family noticed changes, but the full extent of the issues was not clear outside their private lives. The main problems in their marriage appeared gradually. One significant factor was control. Aubrey started to exert more influence over Tamara's decisions. This control showed itself in different ways, such as monitoring who she spoke to and restricting her movements. This behavior was not openly discussed, but created tension between them. Along with control, arguments became more frequent. Disagreements about daily matters turned into larger conflicts. These arguments reflected deeper issues that the couple did not resolve. Over time, the disagreements intensified and became part of their regular interactions. Despite the problems, Tamara tried to maintain the family unit for several years. She continued to care for their children and manage her business. However, the strain in the marriage grew. The disagreements and control behaviors took a toll on their relationship, making it difficult for them to live together peacefully. Eventually, the difficulties led Tamara to consider separation. This decision did not come lightly. It was a result of years of unresolved conflicts and the need to protect herself and her children. Separating from Aubrey was a way for Tamara to remove herself from the harmful environment that the marriage had become. The separation marked a turning point. After 14 years together, Tamara decided to live independently. She moved out of the family home and began the process of rebuilding her life without Aubrey. This step was important for her safety and well-being, as well as for the future of her children. Following the separation, contact between Tamara and Aubrey continued but was limited. However, the relationship remained tense. Aubrey's controlling behavior did not completely stop. The separation did not resolve the underlying issues, and the situation between them remained fragile. Aubrey's behavior reportedly became more controlling and obsessive. Reports from the investigation and court proceedings indicate that Aubrey struggled to accept the end of the marriage. Rather than respecting Tamara's choice to live independently, he began to exert pressure on her through various means. One key theme that emerged during this period was Aubrey's need to maintain control over Tamara's life. This need for control manifested through actions that went beyond normal attempts to resolve marital issues or negotiate arrangements related to separation or custody of children. Instead, Aubrey's behavior showed signs of obsession, a fixation on Tamara that interfered with her ability to move forward. Evidence presented during the trial revealed multiple instances where Aubrey attempted to assert dominance and control. This included sending threatening messages to Tamara, attempting to monitor her whereabouts, and creating situations that forced Tamara to fear for her safety. These acts were not isolated. They were part of a pattern that grew increasingly severe as time went on. There were also reports of stalking behavior. Aubrey was found to have followed Tamara or appeared unexpectedly at places she frequented. Such incidents contributed to an atmosphere of intimidation, making it difficult for Tamara to feel secure even in her own community. The pattern of stalking behavior demonstrated a clear disregard for Tamara's boundaries and personal space. Aubrey's actions indicated planning and premeditation. The level of surveillance and the timing of his appearances suggested that he was tracking Tamara's movements carefully. This pattern of stalking and control was a warning sign of escalating violence, which unfortunately culminated in the tragic murder. The emotional risks Tamara faced during this period were significant. Living under the constant threat of her estranged husband's actions created ongoing psychological pressure. The uncertainty about what Aubrey might do next would have impacted her sense of safety and well-being. Physically, the risks were also clear. The presence of threats and stalking behavior often precedes physical violence in domestic abuse cases. Investigators noted that Tamara's separation, instead of providing relief, exposed her to heightened danger because Aubrey's obsession intensified. It is important to note that cases like Tamara's often follow this trajectory. After separation, some individuals escalate their controlling behavior as a way to reassert power. This can involve threats, stalking, harassment, and ultimately violence. In Tamara's situation, her decision to live separately and continue her own life was met with resistance. Aubrey's refusal to accept the separation and his attempts to regain control increased the risk factors. These factors combined to create a dangerous environment that required intervention. Despite these clear signs, the system's response to such situations can sometimes fall short. Tamara's case highlights the challenges victims face when trying to protect themselves after separation from abusive partners. The limitations in support and protection can leave victims vulnerable. Throughout this period, Tamara's friend was aware of the tension and the risks posed by Aubrey. On the night of the attack, the friend's presence was crucial, yet it was not enough to prevent the fatal outcome. This indicates the difficulty of fully safeguarding victims when the abuser is determined and prepared. On July 7, 2021, a violent crime took place at a home in Staleybridge, Greater Manchester. The victim was Tamara Padi. In the early hours of the morning, Tamara's estranged husband, Aubrey Padi, entered her house without permission. Reports show that he did not force the door open. Instead, he had a set of keys to the property. This allowed him to let himself into the house quietly and avoid detection. Aubrey arrived before Tamara returned home. He hid inside the house, waiting for her arrival. This indicates premeditation. He was aware of Tamara's schedule and planned to be inside the home when she came back. Aubrey's ability to enter the home without raising suspicion or alerting anyone nearby showed he had detailed knowledge of the property and the routines of those living there. Tamara returned home after being out with a friend who was staying with her at the time. The friend had been sleeping over, likely for safety or companionship. Tamara arrived at her home shortly after 1:30 a.m. Upon entering, neither Tamara nor her friend expected violence. There was no immediate sign that Aubrey was inside. However, he was already waiting in the house. His presence was unknown to Tamara and her friend. Aubrey's actions suggest he had planned the timing carefully. Information from the trial showed that he had set an alarm on his phone to wake at a time when Tamara would be asleep, confirming the attack was not spontaneous but a planned event. Once Tamara was inside, Aubrey launched a violent attack. The assault involved multiple stab wounds. The victim was attacked while lying in bed, making escape or defense more difficult. The friend, who was asleep downstairs, heard the attack. At 3:30 a.m., the friend was woken by Tamara's screams. Upon hearing the screams, the friend got up and went upstairs. By that time, Aubrey had fled the house. Despite fleeing initially, Aubrey returned to continue the attack. This return suggests a strong intent to cause harm and prevent Tamara from surviving. The violent nature of the attack and its continuation after an initial flight shows a deliberate and determined effort to kill. After Aubrey fled the house, the friend immediately called emergency services. Police and medical responders arrived quickly at the scene. The police received a call shortly after 3:30 a.m. from a friend staying at Tamara's home. This person reported hearing screams and unusual noises coming from the house. Officers were sent to the scene quickly. Upon arrival, they found Tamara severely injured and pronounced her dead at the scene. The crime scene was secured, and forensic teams were brought in to collect evidence. They collected blood samples, fingerprints, and other physical evidence that could help identify the attacker. The position of the victim's body and the pattern of the injuries suggested a violent struggle had taken place. Multiple stab wounds indicated the attack was severe and personal. The initial focus was to identify any suspects and understand the circumstances of the attack. Officers also interviewed the friend who was staying at the house. This witness provided key information. They had been asleep downstairs and woke up to screams. The friend was a key witness to these events. They later provided important testimony about hearing the screams, seeing Aubrey flee, and the overall sequence of the attack. The investigation quickly focused on Tamara's estranged husband, Aubrey Padi. The couple had been separated for some time, and police were aware of previous issues between them. Aubrey's background was checked. He was a former employee of the South African Navy and had a history that included a past relationship with Tamara. The police searched for any signs that he might have planned the attack. Investigators found that Aubrey had entered the house without permission. Evidence suggested he had inside before Tamara returned home. This was supported by witness accounts and physical evidence at the scene, such as footprints and door marks. Based on this information, police issued an arrest warrant for Aubrey Padi. He was located and taken into custody without incident. During questioning, Aubrey initially denied involvement but eventually admitted to the crime. The police gathered further evidence linking him to the murder. Several pieces of evidence connected Aubrey directly to the attack on Tamara. Phone records and alarm. Investigators discovered that Aubrey had set an alarm on his phone. This alarm was timed to wake him during the night when Tamara would likely be asleep, suggesting planning and intent. Forensic evidence. Aubrey's fingerprints and DNA were found inside Tamara's home, in places he should not have been. Blood matching Tamara's was found on Aubrey's clothing and belongings. Witness testimony. The friend who was staying at the house confirmed seeing a man fleeing the scene. The description matched Aubrey. Previous history. Police also uncovered records showing previous disputes between Aubrey and Tamara. This history provided context for motive and intent. After reviewing the evidence, prosecutors formally charged Aubrey Padi with murder. The charge indicated that the killing was not accidental but planned and deliberate. The legal process began with Aubrey's appearance in court. He pleaded guilty to the charge, which confirmed the prosecution's case. The plea also spared the court from a lengthy trial. Once Aubrey Padi was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife, the case entered the criminal justice system. In the United Kingdom, murder cases are heard in the Crown Court, which handles serious offenses. The legal process begins with a preliminary hearing, where the court reviews the charges and sets dates for trial or plea. Aubrey was formally charged with murder, which means the prosecution believed there was enough evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt that he intentionally caused Tamara's death. The next step was a preparation for trial, where both the prosecution and defense lawyers gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, and reviewed all details related to the case. The prosecution's role was to prove that Aubrey committed the murder deliberately and with intent. The defense, on the other hand, would attempt to challenge the evidence or argue for a lesser charge if possible. In this case, however, Aubrey's legal team made a key decision early in the process. Before the trial could fully proceed, Aubrey Padi entered a guilty plea. This means he admitted to committing the murder of Tamara Padi. Pleading guilty often speeds up the legal process because it removes the need for a full trial with witnesses and cross-examinations. A guilty plea does not mean the case is automatically closed. The court still holds a sentencing hearing to decide the appropriate punishment. During this hearing, the judge reviews all the facts, circumstances, and evidence about the crime, including how serious it was and any factors that may have led to murder. In Aubrey's case, the guilty plea was significant because it confirmed the prosecution's claims and allowed the court to focus on the details of the crime and the impact on the victim and her family. The court also examined Aubrey's behavior before and after the murder. After the guilty plea, the judge sentenced Aubrey Padi to life imprisonment. Life imprisonment is the most severe punishment in the UK legal system. It means the person will spend the rest of their natural life in prison unless they are granted parole. However, life sentences include a minimum term called a tariff, which is a minimum number of years the person must serve before they can apply for parole. In Aubrey's case, the judge set the minimum term at 23 years. This means Aubrey must spend at least 23 years in prison before any possibility of release is considered. The minimum term reflects the court's view of the seriousness of the crime. It is intended to punish the offender and also protect the public from any future harm. This term can only be reduced in exceptional circumstances, and a decision to release is made by a parole board after the minimum term is served. During sentencing, the court described Aubrey Padi's crime as premeditated and planned. Premeditation means that the murder was not a sudden or impulsive act. Instead, Aubrey thought about it ahead of time and prepared to commit the crime. Evidence showed that Aubrey had planned the attack carefully. For example, he set an alarm on his phone to wake up at a specific time when he expected Tamara to be asleep. He entered her home without permission and hid there, waiting for the right moment to attack. The court also considered that Aubrey attacked Tamara while she was vulnerable, lying in bed, and that the attack was brutal and sustained. The presence of Tamara's friend in the house made the situation more complex, but Aubrey continued the assault, showing determination to carry out his plan. The judge emphasized that this was not a crime of passion or accident. It was a deliberate act with the clear intention to kill. This view affected the severity of the sentence and demonstrated the need for strong legal consequences. The murder of Tamara Padi had a significant impact on her family, especially her 2 children. Her death left a sudden and permanent absence in their lives. The children lost their primary caregiver and protector, which meant they had to face emotional and practical challenges without their mother's support. The loss also raised concerns about their safety and well-being, especially given the violent nature of the crime committed by their father. Authorities and social services became involved to ensure the children received the necessary care and protection. The court proceedings included consideration of how the children's lives will be managed moving forward. The sudden trauma caused by losing their mother in such a violent way has long-term effects on children, including potential psychological and emotional difficulties. Support systems, including counseling and foster care, were likely put in place to help them adjust to life without Tamara. Family and friends of Tamara reacted to her murder with shock and a need to understand what happened. They remembered her as a dedicated mother and a hard-working businesswoman. In response to the tragedy, they came together to provide support to the children and to each other. This included practical help like assisting with funeral arrangements and financial aid, as well as emotional support to navigate the grieving process. Friends and relatives also raised awareness about domestic violence, emphasizing the importance of recognizing warning signs in relationships. The case highlighted how domestic abuse can escalate to deadly violence if not addressed properly. Family members often spoke publicly or within their communities to warn others about the dangers of abusive relationships and to encourage victims to seek help early. The community where Tamara lived was affected by the case as well. Her murder drew attention to domestic violence as a serious issue that affects many households but is often hidden. Local organizations and authorities used the case to promote education and prevention efforts related to domestic abuse. Campaigns may have been launched to provide information on support services, how to spot signs of abuse, and where to report concerns safely. The police and social services in the area reviewed their procedures following the case to identify any gaps or weaknesses in protecting victims. This led to a renewed focus on intervention strategies and risk assessments to prevent future tragedies. The case also encouraged community members to be more vigilant and proactive in supporting neighbors or friends who might be experiencing abuse. Overall, Tamara Padi's murder served as a wake-up call for her family, friends, and community. It exposed the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the urgent need for awareness, prevention, and support for victims. The response showed how a community can come together to help those affected while working to reduce the risk of similar crimes happening again. If the story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.